Hi, everybody. This is Dear Mama Sal, and we're live on a Friday lunchtime, which means it's time for us to talk about coping with feelings. And I hope you're feeling absolutely great. Hi there to Jeannie. Good to see you. And to anybody else that's listening in the background there, I just want to say that it's always a pleasure. I'm always amazed who's listening in the background. And the only reason I hear about that is because, you write to me and tell you I've been listening for ages, or I put your cast on while I'm busy doing housework or whatever and listen to you. So that's always amazing to me. And I thank you for letting me know that there are people that choose to listen to Dear Mama Sal rather than to be in the chat. And that's absolutely fine. And a very big welcome to you all. Hi there. That's Jonas, right? Captain Hawkeye. I think that's Jonas. I just want to make sure. Yep, it is. Okay. I haven't completely lost my marbles. It's your alter ego, right? All right. So, very warm welcome to you all. And today we're going to be talking about fear. Ever had any? And I was fearful this week, and I thought I would talk about it because, it's a feeling, and we know that we are responsible for our feelings. That is something. Once you get that into your head, my feelings are my business, nobody else's. Right? It's our reaction to what's happening around us. I've just seen that my phone is about to die, and I don't have a charger for it here. That's rather unfortunate. Hold on. No, plan B. We won't worry about the phone. We'll just put the quotes up elsewhere. Just bear with me a second because I want to be able to make sure I can do that. Best laid plans. Why did I not charge up my phone this morning? I don't know, but I didn't, obviously. So there we go. One of those things, right? Make a plan. So what I'm busy doing is just trying to get two screens up instead of one. And that requires a bit of thought. But I can do it because I am magical. One, nearly there. All right, so our quotes today about feel the fear and do it anyway. And that is a great, what can I say? I found that book, I don't know if any of you have read the book, but I found that book in my 20s and I go back to it often. And so here we go. If you've ever had a moment of fear, it's a really useful thing to go back and have a look at that. For those of you who don't know, Dear Mama Sal is not just me. It's a group of us that get together 3 times a week to cope with life and its reality. Because we know every week one of us is going to be going through something, and that triggers a discussion for us all to think about. And thereby we hold each other's hands and we help each other through life. I just wanted to say, if you haven't followed us on Facebook and Twitter, please do so in case I need to cancel a broadcast, which I did last week, for example, because of a major power outage, and I'll talk about that in a second. But before we get on to the main subject, let's just do our usual, which is just a check-in on birthdays and important days coming up for our viewers. First of all, the most important date coming up for all of us is if you live in the northern hemisphere, north of the equator, then it's only 38 days until spring. And I don't know about you, that's probably the most important date I can think of. We are down into the 30s until there's still spring. If you stand on your tippy toes, just right up like that and look, you'll probably see it coming over the horizon. So, yay, I'm very excited about that. Just a sad anniversary for Jeannie. We know that her husband, York, died a few months ago, and that, it was his birthday on the 2nd, and now she's got her wedding anniversary coming up tomorrow, I think. No, the 12th, I think. Not tomorrow. I don't think it's tomorrow, is it? No, 10th, 11th, 2 days. That's right. Anyway, so I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that and that she knows that we're thinking of her, Jeannie. Yeah, we love you. And it must be a very difficult time and fearful too. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about was how fearful these things can be. And for Beth, her twins, they were born on the 17th. And it is interesting that it's their birthday on the 17th, and yet Victoria just miscarried this week, and so hearts out to her, big hugs, and thoughts and prayers go out that she gets a speedy recovery, both physically and mentally, because that's really a difficult thing to go through. I obviously thoughts and prayers for Benji and Judy at this time with the passing of Judy's mom, and all that we know that first year of loss brings. It's a difficult thing, isn't it, to cope with loss, and I think it actually brings about more fear, a fear of our mortality and fear of everything else. And so this is a subject that I thought was overdue in some way. So it's been a strange week for me. I started to feel fearful early in the week, and I don't know what happens to you when you start to feel fear. Perhaps you can let me know what are your emotional reactions to feel. When I say emotional, physical. What are your physical reactions to feeling fear? And the reason I ask that is because if you know what your physical reactions are, you can actually guard against it better than other people. And that is what I would hope for you, is that you can be aware of what's happening. And once you're aware, that you've been triggered and that you're feeling fearful, that you can do something about it. Susan Jeffers said, taking responsibility means never blaming anyone else for anything that you are doing, being, having, or feeling. How about that one? That's taking responsibility. I thought that's a great quote. Jodi's saying when she feels fearful, she starts to shake, get an instant headache and a stomach ache, and it feels like ice water in my veins. Right, so you are really aware of what fear feels like to you. I start to shake. I definitely can feel, it's, yes, Jonas is saying he starts to shake as well. And so it's a really important thing to know, if you can, identify what happens to you when that starts. I realized once I started to shake that I needed to do some inner work. Does that make sense to anybody? If something was going on inside that I wasn't aware of, then and my hands were starting to tremble like this, and I could feel that I was breathing on the upper part of my chest. Do any of you notice that, where you start to almost hyperventilate? And so I went, okay, those are not good things. And so what I did was I shut everything down. I didn't worry about housework, didn't worry about DearMamaSal, didn't worry about little Christmas villages or anything else. I just stopped everything, and I started to journal, because I wanted to find out what was going on in my brain. Now, I journal in a probably a strange way, and I thought I would show you what I do, because it really helps me get to what's going on. Let me see if I can find it here. So what happens is I start to write down what I'm feeling, and I thought I would share with you this was on Monday when I started this, and it said, today I'm feeling in pain. And I put a box around pain because that was a feeling. And by the way, the reason I was in pain was because there was something going on with my right hip, and I was struggling to actually walk. And, the interesting thing about that is that would set off a whole lot of reactions in my body anyway. And then later on, I said, I feel tired. I put a box around tired because it's a feeling, all right? And then I felt organized, put a box around that. Glad, I put a box around that. Is glad to be able to help uh, Benji. Benji sent me a question that I could help him with, so that felt good. Anyway, so then it went on, and then later on I put and wheezy. I was starting to get wheezy in my chest, so I took my inhaler, and that was good. So you get the idea. Put a box around the feelings, and you'll be amazed how many feelings you have in any one sentence. Yes, Jonas is saying it's important to acknowledge the feelings first before trying to. I don't want to control them, actually, Jonas. He's saying, before trying to control them. I actually don't want to control them. I want to understand what's going on. Yeah, and Jonas is saying it's important to accept that something is happening instead of running away from it. And that's why I stopped everything else. Let me concentrate on what's going on inside. So, but you understand how I do that, right? I just keep writing things down, and every feeling I have, I just put a box around it. Now, the interesting thing is that I came up with quite a few interesting words, and amongst them came the word fearful and fear. And so I went, that's ringing a bell. So what am I feeling fearful about? And the other thing is, you do understand that feelings are neither good nor bad. They're just feelings. All right. It's just your reaction to what's happening in the outside world. So I was looking, I mean, I could identify why I was in pain. That's right. Something's going on. But I couldn't work out why I was fearful. And then I thought, well, maybe it's because of, I'm busy working on the villages, and I'm going to need to start seriously promoting them soon. And what if nobody reacts to them? That was a fear. And then the other fear was, I don't know if any of you relate to this, the fear was also on the other side. What if too many people react to them? And then, so that was a no-win situation right there. So on Tuesday, I noticed I put down that I was sore, but I also had feelings of joy on Tuesday, which was nice. By Wednesday, I noticed I was slowing. My mind was slowing down. Why? Because I was journaling. And then I was getting focus back. I put a box around that. I felt relaxed, put a box around that. Fearful came up quite strongly. Joyful, disciplined, satisfied, disciplined again, twice in one day, and educated. It was interesting, the words that came up. You see, it gave me some clues. And then yesterday, I noticed the words that came up included cold. I felt cold for some reason. I felt slow and disappointed. Right, now then, Jonas is saying feelings come before thoughts. I find it's important to address and recognize what I'm feeling before trying to figure out exactly what triggered it. Yes, so that's why I do that particular. So that's why I thought I'd share it, what I do. All right, I just write down and I put boxes around the feeling. That tells me what I am feeling. And I was amazed how many feelings I had in any one sentence. That's what really got to me. So each day it was telling me what was going on inside. Now try not to judge them. Try not to not write that down because that makes me sound like a wuss. No, just it's what you're feeling. It's not good or bad. It's just what you're feeling. It is your reality at the moment. So don't ignore it, and don't try and go, oh, I better not write that down in case somebody reads that I'm scared at the moment. No. And by the way, do I have any fear of sharing with you that I was fearful? No. You see, it's a reality. It happens to us all. And so, but it is our responsibility to deal with it. And that's the important thing. And remember, responsibility means never blaming anyone else for anything you are being, doing, having, or feeling. All right? That's what responsibility is. And I need to take responsibility for what I'm feeling. So when I got right down to it, my big fear was about this chemo pill I'm about to take. For those of you who don't know, I was diagnosed for, I had a biopsy. No, let me go back. I started with a mammogram in August. By September, I went back for biopsy. By October, I went back for a second biopsy, open wound. And by November, I had a boob chopped off. So, otherwise called a mastectomy. And so now they're pretty sure that it's gone. But what if a cell or two escaped into my body? And the particular cancer that I have, the one that I identified, feeds on estrogen. And so now what I need to do is for the next 5 years, I need to take a pill, a chemical that will kill the estrogen in my body. Now, can any of you understand there is part of me that has fear about putting a pill into my body that is going to kill part of my body? Does that make sense to anybody? Because it sure made sense to me. I went, it's no wonder you're scared. You have every right. Yes, Jonas is saying that's completely understandable. And all right, so Jeannie is saying every Thursday is rubbish day where she lives in Maine, and I have to take the cart out to the street with the ice and snow. Every Thursday, I feel afraid I might fall. I keep praying that my mother and husband will help me not fall. Yes. So I would say that that is a rational fear. Jonas is talking about my fear being a rational fear. And by the way, I think that's a judgment, isn't it? I think, even though some fears are irrational, they are very real to the person feeling it. That fear is very real. I don't think there's, from my experience, that there is no difference in the feeling of fear, whether it's rational or not. So it's just a fear. So then what happened was I went, Sal, it's perfectly normal. I'm certain, that you have every right to feel a little scared about this. But this was more than a little scared. I was obviously fearful. And at some level, I was trying to squish it down. And that's why I was starting to shake and stuff. And so I really had to talk to myself and said, well, do you take any other drugs that kill things off? And I went, well, what about antibiotics? Am I correct that antibiotics kill things off in my body? They're called viruses and stuff. Actually, antibiotics don't kill viruses. But you understand what I'm saying is that I take other drugs that go in there and kill off bad things. So why was I so concerned about this one? I think because of all the side effects that they discussed with me. So the other thing was, and I want to see if you all understand this and can relate to it in any way. There was sort of fear on either side of this. There was fear if I take it, and equally there was fear if I don't take it. Right? And so it was like, whichever way, it was like a catch-22. Whichever way I go, I was fearful. And I went, that's okay. And so what I do is I go back when I'm feeling like that, and I'm really aware of it. I go back to Susan Jeffers, because she really, when I first read her stuff back in my 20s, wow, it's a long time ago now, it made so much sense to me. I didn't like it necessarily, and that is true of a lot of learning, isn't it, about our emotions. I didn't like it necessarily, but it made sense to me. And here are what she said are the 5 truths about fear. The fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. In other words, I would not have this fear if a new part of my development hadn't happened. All right? If I hadn't got cancer, had the mastectomy, and so forth, I wouldn't be taking this pill. So the fact that I was growing in my health, if you like, in some ways, this wouldn't have happened. And that was beyond my control. That was a thing that, I didn't, as far as I know, I didn't do anything that created this. This is just part of life, or in this case, could have been death. So I was just so grateful that I picked up on it so quickly. And so, okay, Jonas is saying the feelings are feelings. We can try and label them, but ultimately we must feel the feeling fully first before allowing them to pass. Yes. So he's saying that one of his mantras when he's feeling down and fearful It's always darkest before dawn. Yes. And so here are Susan Jeffers' 5 things about fear, right? The fear will never go away as long as you continue to grow. So if you're feeling any fear, the chances are you're also in a growing thing. And can you see that in a way, as soon as I fully accepted I was going to take this pill, and uh, and it's on its way to me right now, um, then I'd be getting on with the rest of my life. And have you noticed that the fear is always worse before you do something? She said, this is point 2 on the 5 truths, the only way you get rid of fear is doing something. In other words, to go out and do it. All right. So as soon as that pill arrives and I take the first pill, some of the fear will diminish. All right. The only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. In other words, I've made a choice. Stick to your choice or change your choice. I have the right not to take this pill. 4, not only am I going to experience fear whenever I'm in unfamiliar territory, but so is everybody else. Can you see it's the fear of the unknown? How bad are the side effects going to be for me? That's the ultimate fear. Am I going to have hot sweats all the time? Am I going to have bone loss? All these sort of things. Or bone density loss rather than bone loss. And then her 5th one was pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from the feeling of helplessness. So, every week or every Thursday, Jeannie's saying she needs to push through the fear of walking on the ice and snow to put her garbage cans out. Jeannie, I totally relate to that. All right, because I have the same thing. And so therefore, I've learned to put on good shoes, not to dirty my flip-flops. How many of you know I have taken my garbage out in the snow wearing my flip-flops, my Birks? I mean, really. But what's likely to slide the most on ice? My flip-flops. So it's just like insane. But I do amuse myself sometimes with that stuff. And as you know, you've all watched me shovel snow wearing my slides. They have to be the only shoes I had with me at the time. So can you understand that the only way you get rid of fear is to do something about it? Yeah, Jeannie's saying if you have terrible problems, you can stop the medication. I have tried 2 meds that really upset my system, so I stopped them. And Jody's saying shoveling snow while wearing slides. I remember it well. Yes, and that was when I first moved here and I got snowed in when I didn't have any clothes here. I was moving into the house. There was nothing in the house. I was just moving in, small stuff to put in the cupboards and stuff. And I got snowed in for 3 days. It was just like, it was the fun. Luckily, I'm a happy camper. And the one thing I brought with me when I came was stuff for my fridge. I bought milk and some basics, some bread, some stuff like that. But thank goodness I did, because I would have been totally SOL had I not done that. So I sort of forgave myself about having the fear because I realized it was, and coffee. Yeah, coffee was very important. Yes, and Jonas is saying courage is not about being afraid. It's being afraid yet doing what you have to do anyway. Yeah, Doctor Who said that, right? Courage is not about being afraid, right? So being fearful is not a lack of courage. It's being afraid yet doing what has to be done anyway. So it's the same with Jeannie. Every Thursday is her courage day, all right? As long as the snow and ice are on the ground. Because that's the day she's... By the way, Jeannie, I found out... I've got a new trick, Jeannie, and you might want to look at this. I found out that when it's snowing, I don't necessarily have to put those garbage cans out every week. In fact, I don't even have to put them out every 2 weeks, because they only collect my rubbish every 2 weeks. And I can go, I have lowered my carbon footprint to such a degree that I can go a month between putting my garbage can out. How about that? It's pretty, and now it's going to be even more. You know why? This week, my garbage collection system have changed, and now they're accepting one-use plastics. Yay! That means all the wrapping that you get on stuff, can now go into the recycling. How long did it take them? But at last they're doing it. So understand that fear is okay. It's just a feeling. And it 9 times out of 10 has a perfectly rational base. Now, is having a fear of heights a rational base? No, because heights actually cannot frighten you. If you think about it, if ever you have uh, a time to read a book about irrational fear, read a book called, I think it's called Uranus. No, Life on Icus. I think Icus, Eykis. Anyway, it's one of Dr. Wayne Dyer's books, and the whole book is about irrational fears, but it's a story, and it's a planet. Yeah, it's a planet on which I've got to find the name of that book. Anyway, it's a planet on which all your fears are real. On Uranus, that is the planet, needless to say. The heights actually do come up and attack you. You have every reason to be fearful of heights. And the whole book is about irrational fears, and it is funny, and it makes you look at your irrational fears and just go, really. It really woke me up to how many of my fears were irrational rather than rational. So, it's not that we have a fear of heights. We scare ourselves stupid when we go up high. Do you understand the difference of that? And so one of the ways to deal with those sort of fears, of course, is to desensitize yourself to it. And Hawkeye's reminding us that we don't need to get rid of the fear in order to be courageous. You're allowed to be afraid, but just go through whatever it is that you know you need to do. Vulnerability combined with action is strength, right? That's courage. So, one of the things that I remember reading is most people who ended up winning a Victoria Cross for bravery in the wars, most of them thought they were going to die anyway. Thank you so much, Jody. Jody has found the name of the book. It's called Gifts from Icus. Gifts as in gift giving. Gifts from Icus. Eykis. If ever you suffer from anxiety and depression and stuff like that, boy, read that book, because it will help you see how sort of your irrational fears in a totally different way. And now, every now and then, I go, oh, that's really scary. And I go, no, I'm scaring myself stupid here, because I remember the gift from Icus. And I'm pretty sure that these days you can probably get it on a Kindle, or you can probably get it on a, what do you call it, earbud thing. So enjoy and laugh. I laughed a lot when I read that book, because I kept shaking my head and going, oh, that's me. Now, the interesting thing is that on Wednesday, and I knew that was part of my fear, I had to have, on Tuesday, let me start there. On Tuesday, I got a call from the cancer clinic to say that the pharmacist was going to be calling me on Wednesday. And I knew that was going to happen. And I said yes. And she said, and she's going to go through all the things you need to know about this medication. And I said, but I already know all about this medication. I have all the papers on it. Yes, but she needs to go through all the side effects and everything else. And I said, you know something? I have a really special request here. My special request is to understand that my oncologist did a really great job when I was there, and she went through all the side effects, and I scared myself stupid. And then I regrouped after a few days, and then I decided to read the pamphlet they give you about that particular drug, and then of course I got to the side effects again, and then I scared myself stupid a second time. So it is my request. I realize that the pharmacist has a job to do, but it's my request that you let the pharmacist know that number one, the oncologist went through all the side effects and I scared myself stupid. I read the pamphlet and scared myself stupid a second time. I would really appreciate not having to go through that a third time because it really messes with my mind. Did I have the perfect right to verbalize that? I thought so. And the amazing thing was, when the pharmacist phoned me, she said, I understand that the oncologist went through all the side effects with you. And I said, yep, she did. And that you've read the documentation and that you scared yourself a second time. I said, yep, absolutely. And she said, so I don't need to go through it a third time. Thank you. I really appreciate it. How much better did I feel? You see, Susan Jeffers said, security is not about having things, it's about handling things. Right? And part of my fear about this telephone call was that they were going to go through all these side effects again, and I was going to scare myself stupid again. And you know what I mean by scare myself stupid? Because it's, it's like every known reaction anybody has ever had, they have to document sort of thing. And then you think, oh my gosh, that's going to happen to me. Well, of course it's not. Yeah, Jonas is saying, I think it's as important to try and find a way to be at some peace, even with knowledge of the worst case scenario that you can imagine. Expect the unexpected, be prepared, not scared. That's my mantra, as you know, be prepared, not scared. So was I prepared to hear all those side effects again? Yes. And so to me, I bet I was delighted when she said to me, then I don't need to go through it again. I said, thank you so much. I was so grateful. Susan Jeffers said, when we give from a place of love rather than one of fear, or a place of expectation, more usually it comes back to us more than we can possibly have imagined. All right. When we give from a place of love rather than from a place of expectation, more usually comes back to us than we could have imagined. All right. So Hawkeye and Jonas is busy saying, how do I get at peace with this? Well, that's what I did, as you can hear. Jonas, number one, I started to journal to find out where the fear was. And then once I knew where the fear was, it was about taking this pill and having to have this conversation with the pharmacist. Then I went, okay, now I know how to deal with it. I am prepared and I can do what I want to, not be scared. Now, could I have said, if the pharmacist said to me, we have to read through this list, I'm legally bound, for example, to read through this list, then I could have, said, okay, fine, and sort of, plugged my ears for a little while, or done something else. But, the truth is, I would understand if legally she had to do it. Now, here's a good quote from Susan Jeffers. She said, if you knew you could handle anything that comes your way, what would you possibly have to fear? Jody, I keep thinking about you and all that's happened to you medically. I am pretty certain if I had told you 5 years ago, no, 6, 7, you got cancer-free 6 years ago, right? I think. Anyway, that over the next 6 years, that you're going to have so many other things happen to you, you're going to be almost grateful for having cancer because it taught you how to deal with stuff. It taught you that you can get through these things. It's not what we want, is it? But it is what experience is about. There's something about experience. It teaches you how to deal with things. And so What I wanted you to remember is just that, all right? That really, you know, you have the ability to deal with more than you possibly thought you ever could. Jeannie's saying, even though I'm smart, I was overwhelmed with some of the things I must do re our stocks. I asked my CPA for help. That's our accountant type person. He's talking to people on my behalf. And yes, because you delegated it to somebody that you trust. All right, now that's taking proactive. This is like beyond my pay grade, so let me give it to somebody who understands this stuff. And Jeannie's saying because she did that, her fears are lessened. Absolutely. Now, there were I had an interesting conversation with one of our viewers this week, and I wondered if any of you can relate to this fear. She was saying that she has noticed that since the pandemic, it is difficult to start going out again. Do any of you have any fear about going out again after the pandemic? And what I was talking to her about is that she was not alone in that. But is it a fear, or is it that the pandemic changed our psyche? In other words, prior to the pandemic, we needed to be out and about and mixing with people and doing this and doing that and da da da. Our lives were very, very busy. Then we had that incredible time of lockdown where some of us handled lockdown a lot better than others. And some of us thought, yay, the way I live normally, I can do it guilt-free now. I don't have to worry about going out. Um, and so, it's interesting. And I was saying to her, I don't think you're the only one that's noted a shift. Yeah, Jonas is saying he noticed that he didn't want to go back to work, right? And a lot of people who were working from home didn't want to go back to institutions anymore, their place of work. So, our psyche has changed. Our psyche has changed. Before, we would have said it's impossible to do my job unless I'm there. But now you found out, with all the technology we have today, and because of the need, the technology improved even more. How many of you can remember when we first had smartphones that the newscasters, I think, were among the first to have that technology, and they'd be in, the Ukraine or somewhere, and it used to take forever for that signal to get to them and then get back again. And the anchor would ask a question of them, and there'd be this incredible pause for about 20, 30 seconds before they could answer. And I always remember those days. And now I think, boy, isn't it amazing that, now the signal gets through almost instantaneously. So, all right, so Hawkeye is saying, I felt so free during lockdown. It was like retirement. I was on EI and had all the time in the world. Yes. Yeah, good point. Jonas is saying everyone in this broadcast has already conquered unimaginable odds. Know that with absolute certainty, because that's our nature. Experience has always been just a step towards growth. No matter how small or how slow, growth is still growth. And that is what Susan Jeffers said. As long as we continue to grow, we will continue to have fear. And that's okay. She said, all of my life, I never heard a mother call out to her child as he or she goes off to school, take a lot of risks today, darling. She's more likely to convey to her child, be careful, darling, or be careful. You see, this carries with it a double message. The world is really a danger out there, and you won't be able to handle it. Yeah, how about people who say to you, drive safely? What do they think? You drive unsafely? Right? Um, what your mum is really saying, of course, is that if something happens to you, I won't be able to handle it. You see, she's only passing on her lack of trust in her ability to handle what comes her way. How about that? So when somebody says, drive safely, I always wonder, do they think I normally don't? Yeah, I'd far rather hear, look forward to chatting to you later. Because I know you will have driven safely, but you don't have to verbalize that bit. Does that make sense? How many of those double messages, those messages of fear, do we send to one another? It's a good point. And yet it's sent in love, isn't it? I'm pretty certain when you say to somebody, drive safely, you send it because you love them and you want to be able to talk to them again later. So, yeah, interesting thing. It's your fear, not theirs. Susan Jeffers also said, for many of us, the people we find the most difficult to praise are the ones closest to us, our mates, our children, our parents, and sometimes even our friends. Jody's saying, I always ask you to drive safely. Yep, I know you do, Jody. And every time I just smile to myself and go, I wonder whether she thinks I purposely go out there and don't drive safely. I've always said you are the way you drive your car. Whenever I went out with a boyfriend, the first time I ever let them drive me anywhere, I knew a lot about that person because I knew you are the way you drive your car. And there were some people where I never went out on another date after I drove with them because I knew their life was frenetic. I knew their life was full of drama. I knew their life was full of blaming other people for stuff. And I didn't want that in my life. All right, Jeannie's saying I had 2 nosebleeds recently and I wondered whether I'd have one in the grocery store. So I asked somebody else to go for me. Now I'm going myself. Quite honestly, I found out that having my groceries delivered is far cheaper than going to the store myself because there's no impulse buying. So yeah, there are other ways of doing things, right? Well done. So again, you delegated the task. Good management, self-management. Remember, and this is something we've talked about slowing down last week, and it said, Susan Jeffers said, remember the biggest pitfall as we make our way through life is impatience. Remember that being impatient is simply a way of punishing yourself. It creates stress, dissatisfaction, and fear. It's so funny. What I said to myself was the way I would overcome my fear of the Christmas villages was I would create a base stock, a certain number of base villages that I would have ready. And then I wouldn't take orders. What I would do is I would only sell what I have in stock, and that would limit the amount of stress. But boy, you have no idea how long it's taking me to get those base villages done because there are people that want the stock, friends of mine. And so I keep sending out boxes and I'm still trying to get that base stock ready. And it's taking much longer than I thought. But I'll do it. Jonas is saying, every new friend I've made this year has been the result of me putting myself out there and taking a risk to introduce myself. Yeah, that's true, isn't it? And find a connection I otherwise wouldn't have had. And he's saying, I'm so grateful that I pushed through that discomfort. And he said, it was uncomfortable, but I told myself I had nothing to lose and I had everything to gain. And that is so true, isn't it? That you have everything to gain from pushing through that fear. I am pretty certain every time Jeannie actually gets back from taking the garbage down to the road, that she feels proud of herself for overcoming her fear and that she did it carefully. You see, I think that's the other thing. Having fear is a good thing because it makes you do things more carefully. What if I slip? Well, hello, what are the best shoes I can wear? Do I need to get myself a pair of shoes with, I've got shoes with studs on the bottom, you know, like golf shoes, or I've got studs I can put on. Do I ever use them? No, but I got them. And, Susan Jeffers said, it's a problem. Now, there's another deadening phrase. It's heavy and it's negative. It's an opportunity opens the door for growth. Each time you see a gift in life's obstacles, you can handle things differently and in a rewarding way. Each time you have an opportunity to stretch your capacity in the world, and the more powerful you become. Now, I had something that was pretty negative happen this week, over and above scaring myself stupid. And that had to do with the power failure. You will remember that I had.
Here's what I
um, remember we had that power failure. And on Friday, and that was just after I'd been talking about how prepared I was for a power failure. However, after the power failure and everything came back on again, and it was off for some time actually. What happened was I went and did the usual resetting. What do you do? Well, after you've had a power failure, I go and I know which clocks need to be reset because they are, you know, uh, the microwave one, the one on the stove needs to be reset. Luckily, the computers reset themselves and your phone resets itself. So I was, doing the usual things and that was fine. And it wasn't until Wednesday that I went to go check on the hydroponics because, I do that on Wednesdays, make sure that they've got enough water, enough food in the water, and so forth. And when I pulled back the curtain, because my hydroponics are in my guest bathroom, in the bathtub, when I pulled back the curtain, everything was dead. And you can imagine the shock I went into. All that hard work of building the system, all that work of planting all those seeds, all that nurturing for 2 months, and now I killed everything. How did I kill everything? Well, the way I killed it was beyond my control because I didn't have knowledge. You see, what I didn't know was when there's a power failure, the pump in the water bucket stopped. But when the power came back on again, it didn't reset itself. So does it make sense to you that now that's called experience, right? That's not going to happen to me twice. So beating up on myself about having killed all my hydroponics is actually not fair because I didn't know that was a reality. I do now. Now that I know, now this is like, okay, now I need to reset all the clocks and reset the hydroponic pump. But the disappointment I felt. I had a pepper that was this tall already. I had beets growing. I had kale growing. You name it. Well, time to start again. And there was that part of me that just went, throw the whole lot away. Just buy the damn seedlings. And I went, no, I will not be beaten by a system. I will not be beaten by what I didn't know. I will learn how to do this because I want to. You see, Susan Jeffers said, negative thoughts take away your power. And how have I learned everything? I've learned everything through my mistakes, haven't I? And I don't quit on things. I just take a deep breath and move on. You see, Susan Jeffers said the only time that you will fear anything is when you say no and resist the universe. You must have heard the expression, go with the flow. This means you are consciously accepting what is happening in your life. How many of you waste so much time wishing that it hadn't happened? You know, be it your love life, be it your financial situation, be it whatever. And you're going, why me? You know, when you can have the why not me attitude, your life changes completely. I did not once say, why me, when I heard I had cancer. I actually must admit that there was that little spark inside me that went, boy, I'm going to teach a lot of people a lot of stuff. And maybe that's the reason why I have it, because a lot of people need to hear that it, you know, isn't always a death sentence. So to me, it's about, if you can see the opportunities and things, remember she said that, then it changes its impact. So I want to go back to this having the fear about going out. We know you're not alone. You see, that's what I was trying to tell that viewer. You are definitely not alone. I know that because of how I feel about going out. But here's the other thing I know. Restaurants are still going under. Why? Because the thousands of people that used to go out to eat regularly are not doing that anymore. They still go out, but not nearly as often. And therefore, there is a huge loss in the restaurant business. By the way, I live in a near I live near Vancouver in British Columbia, and it has, you know, so many restaurants in it. It's just amazing, and you know, it is heartbreaking to see how many of them have failed. But it is what it is. They didn't, you know, their business did not go bankrupt because of something they did wrong. It is beyond their control. A pandemic happened. It changed the way we live with things. You know, it's interesting. I heard just before I came onto the broadcast that they've shot down another foreign object coming into the U.S. And this one was coming in from the Bering Sea up north in Alaska. And the interesting question that was asked by one of the um, press in the press gallery, one of the press people said, how do you know whether it was manned or not before you shut it down? Interesting question. But apparently it was much smaller and, you know, obviously thought it could sneak its way in without being detected. And they shut it down. There's a very strong message being sent, which is, don't mess with our airspace. We're going to shoot you down. But how many of you can see there is a possibility that that will have some pretty negative effect? And, you know, if you happen to uh, accidentally fly into U.S. space. The reason I say that is I am about 20 streets away from the US border, you know, and where I live, there, you know, not very far away from me, that there is a whole place where, you know, you can literally, if you wanted to, I've never done it, but, you know, you can stand with one foot on one side of the border and one foot on the other. But, you know, I would never do it because I would too fearful of what could happen to me. But, you know, it's just like, yeah, and that's one of those things I'm not going to feel the fear and do it anyway. You know, I know that that's called be smart. Susan Jeffers said the truth is that love and power go together. So therefore, if love and power go together, then fear and weakness go together. Does that make sense to everybody? When we are fearful, we end up feeling weak. And that is why you need to be really aware of what you're fearful of. All right. And then think it through until you get your power back. That's what I would ask of you. But I'm going to be talking more about this on Sunday because understanding that led me to other things. And that's what I want to talk about on Sunday. is how that happens. So here's the thing. I wanted to ask you if you ever judge people by the car they drive. I was out on Tuesday. I was out and about, and I was in a parking lot, and then there was this woman in a Jeep, and she was parked, waiting for somebody, obviously, but she parked in such a way she was blocking a whole section of the parking lot. And I remember I got into my car to leave, and I saw her, and there was this part of me that was so angry, and I go, "What are you doing, woman? And you're driving a Jeep." You see, I drive a Jeep. And there was something about the fact that she was in a Jeep that made me twice as angry. You know, it's like people like us don't do that. People who drive Jeeps don't do things like that. Do any of you relate to that? And have any of you ever noticed that, you know, I always remember when I bought my first new car, and it was a yellow little Fiat. I remember it really well. And up until that time, there were very few yellow cars on the road. But the moment I bought a yellow Fiat, I was amazed how many yellow cars there were on the road. There was something about I'd switched on a switch that made me hypersensitive to yellow cars, whereas before I'd never noticed them. Why is that? And so, it made me chuckle that I saw this woman in a Jeep and she was misbehaving and she was giving a bad name to all Jeep owners. Weird. And I just burst out laughing. And probably somebody else watching me is going, "Oh, there's a lady that's gone cuckoo." But I just burst out laughing because I thought, how funny is that? So my expectation was if you have a Jeep, you're meant to drive a lot more considerately than that. And that's my judgment. Now, some of you will remember the story of the yellow paper. Last week, Amazon messed up, or a packer, not the whole of Amazon, a packer messed up and sent me yellow paper, copy paper, instead of white cardstock. And it was quite a story. However, you will remember that rather than be uh, negative about it, I decided, and then I went to try and get it replaced in Amazon, and I got caught up in the chat loop, which is automated. And it kept saying, if you're unhappy, ask for a refund. And then the refund said, we don't refund on this product. And then there was no way to get to talk to a human. There was no way to get out of this loop. And there was no way to get my $30 back because I'd spent $30 on this paper. That paper is expensive. And so I went, now what am I going to do? Am I going to just let that $30 go? I don't think so. So what can I do? And I thought, well, if all else fails, I'm going to write to the manufacturer, see if they'll refund me in some way. So I did. I wrote to the manufacturer, and I really, quite honestly, forgot about it. And I knew I was due to write to them again and let them know that I subsequently got a customer service number for Amazon. And I spoke to a human in Montreal and explained the situation and how I got caught up in the loop and it wouldn't let me do anything. And they said, not a problem. We can see that you tried, because they can see that I kept trying to talk to the system. And no problem. Don't worry about sending the paper back. We'll send you the proper paper. And I thank them so much for their kindness. And as you can see, I'm now using yellow copy paper instead of white, because I'm finding ways to use it. So, but the interesting thing was, I'd forgotten about writing to the manufacturer. And suddenly I got an email in my inbox, and it was from the customer service manager in Amazon. And the joke is that the company in the States that made the paper had contacted Amazon and said, we've just got this complaint. I just asked if they could help. And, can you explain why this customer couldn't get a refund when you sent her the wrong paper? And this guy was so polite and said, I just wanted to let you know how sorry I am that our system, went into a way that didn't work for you. And perhaps you could tell me more. So I wrote back and I told him exactly what happened. And I recommended that he try the system. And I explained that what happens is the automated system does not allow you to get out and talk to a human or give you a number to call if you're not happy, or an email address to send something to if you are not happy. And so, but I said, I want to let you know how extremely impressed I am that you contacted me. And by the way, that is the reason why I do so much of my shopping on Amazon these days. And I think about how much business, stores like Walmart and so forth have lost because of the exceptional service I get from Amazon. Are they perfect? No, but pretty close. And so I said, this is the very reason you get my business, is that you do appear to care. And I am very grateful for that. And I will continue to give you more business because of it. Because I know it's saving me a fortune in going out and about. And the other thing is it's so quick, isn't it? I mean, you order it today and most times you've got it by tomorrow. And by the way, if it says you're not going to get it for another month, you know what I know? It means they're waiting for it to come in from China, in which case it's probably way cheaper for me to get it from Wish. Now, I want to tell you about that because that's an interesting thing that I found. There was a certain glue that I wanted, and it was like $30 on Amazon. And I wasn't in a hurry for it, so I thought, I wonder what the knockoff is from China. $2. Now, I also ordered a smaller amount from Amazon in case the knockoff didn't work as well. But the knockoff arrived this week. Boy, is it good. And I'm going, I now know I don't need to spend $30. I just need to reorder right now so that I've got time for it to come from China. I don't want when time nearly run out. I now know it's worth having this in stock. By the way, did you know that a lot of glues you should not order in the winter because they degrade in cold weather? So that's something else to be aware of. I will in future be ordering my glues in the summer, but we will see how it goes. So the only way to feel better about yourself in terms of fear, is to go and do something about your fear. And did I have some fear I was going to lose my $30? Yes, I was in fear of that. But if I didn't do enough about it, I was guaranteed that would happen. Does that make sense? If I just sat and complained about it, I was guaranteed to lose $30. But I needed to do something about it in order for that not to happen. And did I fear that I might look stupid or whatever? Yeah, sure. But the thing was, I lost my $30 and I wasn't happy about that. Susan Jeffers said, the sense of having a goal in your life will put you on the side of giving instead of getting. Most people focus more on what they want from their lives. And that could lead to a thinking in a victim of life way. If you start playing a role of a person who's having meaning and a goal in his or her life, you will get back the self-esteem you deserve. So when I started to beat up on myself, what do I know? Dr. Jampolsky, Jerry Jampolsky, the author, said, and psychologist or whatever he is, He said, he wrote a book called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And what he said is there are basically two emotions in the world, love and fear. And everything else is a derivative of either love or fear. So jealousy would be a derivative of fear. Um, Compassion would be a derivative of love, right? Makes sense? So you go, he said everything boils down to one of two things, either love or fear. So if ever you want to change your reality, and I wanted to change my fear, then work on the opposite. And, the opposite can be as simple as I knew that if I was in fear, I needed to do some loving things, which I did. And that would balance out my fear. But if you're not quite sure, it's really useful to get hold of a thesaurus and just see what is the antonym or the opposite. You can just do it in Google anytime you want to. What is the opposite of, and then put in your negative feeling. Let's say you're feeling frustrated. I have no idea what the antonym of frustration is. Jody, could you just look that up for us if you've got a sec? If you're going, I feel frustrated, you go, okay, that's a pretty negative feeling. So let me know that the opposite of that has to be a loving act. And who do I need to love? Well, if I'm frustrated, obviously, the person I need to love is myself, because I am beating up on myself. I am frustrated. Does that make sense? And so what I'm learning to do is to take those moments and see them as opportunities to give myself something to balance it out. Huh. In her book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, Susan Jeffers stated this about people living in concentration camps. She said, okay, thank you, Jody. Jody's saying that the antonym, the opposite of frustration, is satisfaction and contentment. What can I do to bring me satisfaction and contentment, because it will balance out my fear, my frustration? Make sense? All right, let me just say, here's what she said. We who live in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been very few in number, but they offered sufficient proof that everything can be taken away from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. The way in which a man or woman accepts his fate and all the suffering it entails in a way which takes up his cross, gives him ample opportunity, and even in the most difficult of circumstances, adds to a deeper meaning in his life. I again go back to Aaron, who we know life has dealt a very difficult blow. She has basically only able to control, luckily, her mind and her face and one arm. The rest of it, she needs help controlling. And, I had the honor to meet her and even get a hug. And, she just reminds me how it is possible to have so much taken from you and yet live a happy life. She is so grateful for the things she has, doesn't concentrate on the things she doesn't have. She's so grateful she has the ability to be able to use her phone, right? Even if it's with one hand, that's fine. But you understand that means she's got to accept the fact she's going to be slow in responding to people. And so she's learned to use technology the way she can turn her speech into words, which means that it won't always have exactly what she wants to say, but it's pretty good. And I found it interesting because one of the things that I was very frustrated about was this business about I was not allowed to record when I went to the oncologist. And I've subsequently been talking to different people about this, and medical people, medical students, and so forth. And one of the things that definitely is coming up, and a lot of people are telling me, is I have the right, all right? And that it is important to know I have that right to be able to understand what they're telling me. And the fact that they are going to send me the written word is not the same. Because the written word will not have the questions I asked and the responses I got. And therefore, I'm going to get stronger on this. And I have it in my goal plan to speak to the College of Surgeons in the University of British Columbia, and to talk to them and say, what are the words I need to use to be able to get past this hiccup and to stop being victimized by the insurance companies? Or do I just say, I am sorry that you don't want me to record, but I have the right under my civil rights to do so? I want to make sure I've got it right, and be able to say, and I've discussed this with the College of Surgeons or oncologist or whatever, and Dr. So-and-so, feel free to contact them. But I will be recording this whether you like it or not. And my attitude is, if you need me to sign a disclaimer to say I won't sue you, that's another thing. But I have the right to know what you're telling me. Therefore, I have the right to record. Make sense? It's very interesting, when you decide not to back down from what you believe to be right. It never would have struck me until I lost my hearing. Never would have struck me until I lost my hearing. But you'll be amazed how many things you miss when you lose your hearing. So, what I want you all to understand is fear is very real for all of us. And when we understand that fear, we understand that we have the right to balance it out. We have the ability to balance it out, but it takes a bit of work. Are you prepared to do the work? That is my question. Are you prepared to take a moment to slow down? Are you prepared to take a moment to go to your thesaurus or to go to Google and say, what's the opposite of this feeling? Because that's what I need to practice. Are you able to talk to your friends and go, okay, fine, what other drugs do you take that are killing off things in your body? Because apparently I have a big fear of that drug going in and killing off parts of my body. So what other things can you think of that do that? All right. I mean, and that's, when I realize I take antibiotics and I don't freak out. But, it doesn't have the word cancer associated to it. So when I look at these things, it is amazing to me how it changes stuff if we choose to. I want to just take a couple of moments to acknowledge the Decluttering Club. That at the moment consists of myself, Lauren, Jody, and Kanzi, otherwise known as Saskia, in New Zealand. And so there are two of them in the Southern Hemisphere because Saskia is in New Zealand, Lauren is in Australia, and Jody and I are obviously in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm in Canada, Jody in New Hampshire in the States. And what we're doing is we have committed to spend 15 minutes a week, minimum, decluttering. And I want to tell you, it is amazing the difference it has made. And I realize that part of my problem now, as I start to work on other things, is I have a mountain of old papers. Do any of you have that? And what is the fear attached to that? Why am I holding on to all these papers? Well, there might be something in there that's important. Do any of you relate to that? I'm hoarding it because there might be something in there that's important. So I went, okay, that is a rational fear. That is a very rational fear, which means you've got to go through every single piece of paper to be able to alleviate that fear. Or you go, so be it, and just send the whole lot off to be shredded. So I decided, no, I know I've got a shredder somewhere in my house, but I can't find it. It's a bit like my passport. They're living together somewhere in sin. Hopefully not too close. So what I decided was, rather than procrastinate any longer, because that's the next part of the next thing that I want to start decluttering, is all the papers that are lying around. I decided to, for the sake of $30, get myself a new shredder. And when I find the other one, so be it. I will, have a backup and have it in a different room, probably, so that, I have one in the living room and one in my craft corner. So what I did was I got this new one, and I got one of those ones that cross cuts, so it ends up cutting it both ways. And it also cuts business, what do you call them, credit cards and things. So that's good. And the next thing is, okay, now you've got it, but now you need to get into the habit of using it, because, obviously I've not had a habit of using it. And so I put it right next to the door that I use to go out to the garden. And as you know, I spend time every day getting fresh air, and I go out through that door because nearly always I'm going to the garden to do something. So I have actually located the shredder right next to that door. And the thing is that as I go out, I take 3 or 4 bits of paper and I just quickly scan them to see what they are and shred them. When I come back in, I'm changing shoes out of my garden shoes back into my indoor shoes. I take another little handful, check them, and put them through the shredder. Now, when I am consistently doing that, you understand I am going to have a lot of paper shredded. Imagine if I did that every day. I probably will get through that paper in 6 months. It'll all be gone. That would be wonderful. Maybe less. Well, the other thing I've started to do, and I wondered whether any of you can understand this in terms of decluttering. I've got a studio area which is acting as a storage locker. I've decided that every day I am going to move one thing out of that room. And if I end up putting one thing back in there from another room, I then need to take 2 things out, right? Makes sense? I'm trying to make sure I've got a negative flow in that room. And so it is amazing. If you think about it, if I took one thing out of there every day, that would be 365 things would leave that room in the next year. Any of you going, wow, 365 things would leave that room? The question is, I wonder how many thousands of things are in that room, because the boxes I have left are what I call the junk boxes. And the reason I haven't unpacked them is I don't have anywhere to put that junk. And you're going, yes, you do. It's called the garbage can. Well, that's the whole thing. But while I'm sorting that out, I need to be able, it's like everything else. Remember that in order to deal with the papers, I needed a shredder. And therefore, I had to save up for the shredder. That was a delay. Save up for the shredder, buy the shredder, and now I'm starting that process. The same way is I know that to be able to unpack those boxes, I need to build more cubies that I can put things in, even if it's just for sorting, so that I have order of some sort. And then I'm going, but in order to do that, I've got to move things out of that room so I can build the cubies in there. I've got all the stuff ready to build the cubies. And then goody, Yvonne wrote to me and said, it's time for us to measure your arms again, because I have to measure my arms every month to make sure I'm not suffering from lymphedema. And so she said, and Wade's busy working, so I'm going to come and visit you on my own. And I went, oh, that's awesome. She can help me get things out of that room. And then I also am aware that that's a negative feeling because I'm going to take things out of that room and they're going to go in my bedroom and my bedroom's going to be cluttered again. And I'm going, it's worth it. It's worth it. Just put them neatly somewhere where you can't see them all the time unless you're in the bedroom, and you can do this. So the first thing is to clear the space so that I can make the units. The next thing is making the units takes a lot of space, and I've got that space in my bedroom. um, so there's another idea I've got to think about. Maybe what I take out needs to go somewhere else, not in the bedroom. And I'm going, or I've got to put them in a way in the bedroom that they're not in the way of my building a new wall unit. And then what I found is once I've built it, I can maneuver it fairly well, as long as it's not higher than the door frame. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And I think probably the bedroom is the easiest place to do that. And what if I just construct one cubie every day? Eventually, what do I need? About 15. Yeah, it's a couple of weeks, I'll have it ready to move back in again. Or if I need to, I can wait until Yvonne gets back again and she can help me. Susan Jeffers said, I believe that if something is troubling you, simply start from where you are and then take the action necessary to change it. Jody, has had a tough week. So I'm pretty sure that her decluttering didn't go very well. But it doesn't mean she has to give up on it. Why? Because Lauren taught us last week. Lauren didn't do her 15 minutes of fame. But this week, she sent me 2 different declutterings. Yeah, she made up for it. And the first one she sent me was that she took out a whole bag of garbage, a garbage bag, and one of clothes went out of her room in 1 week. Can you imagine that? That's an awful lot of stuff. Yes. Now, Jody is saying what they're doing is they're taking it in small bits because any progress is still progress. Jody, the same thing as my 1 piece of paper or 3 bits of paper, all right? If I put them all into a bag, I'd have a lot more than 2 garbage bags, small garbage bags, what I call them, Safeway bags, which is our goal. But because I'm cross-shredding it comes down to next to nothing. So I'm aware of that, and I'm going, so the process is still good. I agree with you. Progress is progress. As long as you're doing something, you're still ahead of the game. Remember 365 bits, all right? And then what Lauren did is not only the 2 bags went out of her room, but then she was busy with a shelf that she's working on as well. So what I'm noticing is it's now becoming a bit of a way of life with me now that it wasn't before. I don't know about you, Jody. Are you finding that as well? That you've lost the fear of it and you realize the way to do it is just very slowly. It's not an all or nothing thing. It is just, can I do one thing, one small thing today? In which case, then my habit is good. You see, I think that's the other thing. It's our habits that fall down. Now, what I found out was when I got so involved with the Christmas villages, my steps stopped happening. And, because time is finite. And so I gave extra time to the villages. What went away? The time I spent on walking. And I went, well, that's not very clever. That's not very clever. I need that exercise. And by the way, how many of you know that when I've had that incredible pain in my right hip, I'm going, oh, that's a good excuse. I won't have to do my steps now. And I don't have to feel guilty. You know what I said to myself? Imagine that you are Rafa Nadal or one of the top tennis players. Do you think that a tweak, in their right hip would stop them during a match? And I went, nope. And I went, but I don't have the doctors that they do either. And so I said, good. So go and take a painkiller because you're in pain. And then do your steps. Do some steps so you don't feel guilty. Because you know that using your hip probably is a good idea. Just don't overstrain it. And that's what I've been doing. So I haven't worried about getting 8 to 10,000 steps in. I've been more concerned about, did I make an effort to do it? And did I do it in a safe way? And if the answer to that is yes, then whatever I've managed is good enough. Jody is saying about the overwhelm decluttering thing. She said, yes, it's just about being consistent. I've been in overwhelm, but just trying to move a few things every day. Yeah. And I am amazed how that does. Now, here's another way that I got really fearful this week. I'm busy cutting things in confetti corner, which is my craft room. And then I'm taking them to the living room and I construct things while I watch television. But what I noticed was I was bringing in so much stuff every day, and there's no way I could ever deal with it all. And therefore, I spent most of the time gathering stuff, either to take it to the living room or trying to tidy up the living room and get it back into the confetti corner. I said, that's not working for me. I'm creating my own problem here. So now everything stays in confetti corner until I need it. If I'm going to work on a particular project, be it the butterfly card, hang on. Okay, I love this thing. So if I'm going to work on that, let me just take the bits that belong to that with me. And when I finished it, let me take it back to the craft room and then bring the next thing I want to work on. So my question is, how many of you are creating your own monsters all the time? All right? And doing what I was doing, which is just creating more mess. One of the things I noticed is when I bring things to the living room to work on them, it made a mess in my living room, but I really liked it that I could binge watch and just be doing it mindlessly. It suited me. But what I noticed was clean up a problem because I have got gray rugs in my living room and I'm dealing with white confetti going onto them. And it's gray shag type rug. So, getting the confetti out of there is a nightmare. And so I stood there one day and I went, all right, so you need a different plan. The idea of doing it while you're watching television is a good idea because you don't have television in the craft room. And then I said, what if the carpet that you have at your feet while you're doing this is white, not gray? And so I took one of my bath mats and I put it where I sit and do the construction. And all I do is I let all the white bits drop on there while I'm doing stuff, and I don't even worry about it. Why? It is small enough just to fold it up at the end of the evening and take it to a bigger area and shake all the bits out of it, and then take it back to where it is. And then also it's small enough that I can huck it in the wash every week. And I went, that is such a simple solution. Such a simple solution. Of course, there was plan B, because I'm great in plan B. Plan B was, what are you watching? And most of the things you're watching are streaming things. You're not watching the news, you're watching streaming things, which means you can be taking your tablet or something and working in the craft room. And instead of a television, you're working on a device. And I went, that makes sense. I can do that too. The other thing is, if I wanted to really upgrade in there, I have, the ability to be able to put a monitor in there. There are so many different options if we want to find them. Make sense? So I look at this decluttering and go, all I needed was this new habit. The new habit is I'm going to make it, do it in a different way. Now, Kanzi in um, hmm, New Zealand, I'm trying to think, where was the picture I had of her stuff? Because she did something this week as well, and I had a picture of it, but I don't know what I did with the picture. Rats. Anyway, just to let you know, she's also doing it. And what is happening is it's getting easier. And that's what I'm hearing from everybody. You know, if you get into the habit of moving at least one thing every day, you understand you will be moving a lot of things out. And quite honestly, I found, oh, I know what else I did. I know what else I did. You remember last week, I pulled out some stuff out of my closets in my entranceway, and I had two fur coats in there. A fur coat and a fur stole were in there. And of course, I was talking to you about the fact that what am I got them for? Because we don't wear them anymore. And then I started to think about that. Well, I don't want to take them to the store because they smell musty. So I spent the week doing the research on how to get the musty smell out of, coats that have been sitting around for too long. And part of me went, I'm pretty sure I could huck them in the dryer with wet towels and that would steam them up a bit. I'm pretty sure I can do that. But I didn't. What I did was I noticed that they recommend putting them in with some ground coffee. You know, have ground coffee in a bag and in like a herb bag, you know, you put herbs in. And it's amazing how that will take away the musty smell. Ground coffee is very useful for that, by the way. And of course, who doesn't like the smell of coffee? And then I thought, but wait a minute, I've also got potpourri that I made during the summer. And so what fur coat wouldn't be better for the smell of roses? And so I went, okay, so now I have this construction size container bag, and inside I have three coats. It worked. I have three coats that are busy seeping, if you like, steeping like you would tea. And this week, on Tuesday, I realized that where I used to live, there is a high-end store for secondhand clothes. And I'm going, fur coats are pretty high-end. So I can either give them away or whatever. But before I give them away, let me see if the high-end store would take them, because I believe that they are both now antiques. They're both 50 years old, but still in really good condition. And that makes them, pretty valuable in terms of people wearing that sort of thing. And retro is less than antique, but you understand what I'm saying. So now they have value again. So before I give them away, let me see if I can make some money off them. And then I thought, but one of them is monogrammed. You know, it has my aunt's, the mink stole has my aunt's monogram in it. And I went, that's fine. I looked that up. It adds to the value. So there you go. That's what I'm going to do. Will it be difficult to let go of it? I'm a bit fearful about doing that. Yes. But that's a pretty big garbage bag going out this week. Except it's not garbage, it's precious cargo. And I've also put my LL Bean raincoat in there because it doesn't fit me anymore. I love it to bits, but it just doesn't fit me anymore. It's a size 12, and don't I wish I was a size 12? I will be, but not in this week, not this year. So it's time for it to go. And if I get back to that, I'll buy another one because I love it and I know they last forever. I've probably had that raincoat for 20 years as well, and it still looks like new. So let it go this time. So I look at it all and go, remember to switch it over. Switch the negative over to the love. I didn't have to give this away. Before I give it away, take it to a store that sells secondhand clothes. Now, Kimmy said I could sell them online. You know, that's a whole lot of trouble, a whole lot of packing up, and I've got to go through the losing it again. So I thought, no, pack it all up, take it to the secondhand store. I've taken clothes there before, and they've gladly taken my clothes. All right. And so now they might say no, but the good news is that they probably will say yes because they're good quality. So here's the other thing. What I will do is on Monday, before I take them out, I will take them out of this bag and let them hang in the fresh air. I'll take them outside and let them hang in the fresh air for a while, just to get, that fresh air into it. And then I will take them, put them back in the fancy garment bag and take them. And they've been through so much. They have a lot of history on them. And it's time to say goodbye, however difficult that is. And talking of goodbye, that's the subject that I wanted to talk about. It is fearful to say goodbye. And yet, when we do it, when we're prepared to make that choice to do it, we end up with freedom, with so many things. And for some of us, the fear of saying goodbye to friends that aren't friends anymore. What if I don't get any new ones? Well, do what it takes to get new ones. Right? There's always the upside if you want to look at it. I want to tell you, it has been a very interesting week for me, very educational. I've taught myself a lot about myself. I've processed a lot, and I am happy with it. And I'm still dealing with the odd twinge of fear because fear is like loss, right? It comes in waves, and that's okay. It'll keep coming until I've dealt with it all. And because I understand that process, I have the greater freedom, if you like. So that's my story for today. This is DearMamaSal saying, understand that we all feel negative things as much as we feel positive things. If you can process them both the same way, you will be in a much better position. You will have a lot more freedom of thought. And what peace really is a lack of negative thinking. That is peaceful. When you can feel the negative and let it flow, that is peaceful. And I would say to you all, be aware that the fear is there to protect you. Jeannie, it is good that you feel fear about going down on the slippery ice and snow. It is good because it makes you think how to do it more carefully. And it makes you think whether it's worth doing it this week. Now, in my case, if I wait a week, the chances are the rain will be back, in which case I won't need to do it in the snow. And if I can wait a month, which I can now, then there's very likely. But then there's this other side that goes, and with my luck, it'll snow again on the day that I've got it so full that it has to go out. And I'm going, in which case I will deal with that as well. So this is DearMamaSal saying, every week teaches us something new if we care to learn. This is DearMamaSal saying thank you so much to Jody for helping me do these broadcasts, to Jeannie as well for backup here, and to all of you who are listening in the background and who may watch this in the replay. Thank you for continuing to learn and teach yourself more about yourself. This is DearMamaSal saying bye-bye for now.